Sunny Atlanta. The 13th day of quarantine in the city is on the brink of extinction. Panic and horror surround those who have managed to survive. No one understands how it will all end, but how did it all begin? 2 weeks before the current events. An ordinary day in Atlanta does not portend anything unusual. The city is bustling with life. Elementary school teacher, Caddy Frank, brings her students on a field trip to the local hospital. At the same time, on one of the floors of the clinic, Dr. Sanders finds herself in quarantine due to an unknown illness. The woman remembers that shortly before the first symptoms appeared, she had contact with a patient from Syria who was sick. In another part of the city, Jenna also feels unwell, but not because of the virus. She is anxious about moving in with her boyfriend Alex. At the last moment, Jenna backs out and confesses to a cop that she is not ready to rush. Alex is unable to sort things out with his girlfriend because he is called to the department. There, a major meeting is being planned, where the police are asked to prepare for a difficult situation in the city. There is a suspicion that the Syrian brought an unknown virus to Atlanta and quarantine may need to be declared. Dr. Sabina Lomers speaks to the police officers. She also talks about the threat of an epidemic but assures the audience that nothing serious is happening. Another main character who will face difficult trials is Teresa. The pregnant woman visits her mother's shop, where her mother reminds her that she is expected at the adoption agency, which is looking for parents for her daughter. The reminder upsets Teresa, but her boyfriend reassures her and assures her that he has everything under control. They will run away tonight and no one will be able to take their child. Caddy's students perform for the patients, but the teacher is concerned about why Dr. Sanders did not meet them. The doctor on duty pretends not to know about the colleague's fate and does not tell the teacher about the infected doctor's condition. Caddy begins to suspect something strange is happening soon. When they were about to leave, the doctors announce that the children will have to stay a little longer. The hospital is under quarantine and everyone must undergo a thorough check. Dr. Lorms arranges a secret meeting with Alex and asks him to take the situation under personal control. She admits that she has extensive experience but has never encountered such a virus before. According to the expert, the danger threatens not only Atlanta but the entire world. On-call officers are sent to the Zero patient's home, from where the doctors believe the epidemic began. Cops protect themselves as much as possible with shields and gloves and convince the patient's relatives that they should also take safety measures. The boy is in serious condition and is taken to the hospital despite his attempt to escape. Caddy realizes that her son and his friend Thomas have run away. The teacher goes in search of the boys just as the Zero patient is being brought in. The woman notices the patient but refuses to leave the corridor until her students are found. Officer Jake Riley volunteers to help Caddy. Together they search for the missing boys, and the pair witnesses an even more terrifying sight: the bodies of Dr. Sanders and her fiancé. Fresh news reports indicate that the situation has worsened. The Zero patient died after a severe period. The cops also learn about what happened to Dr. Sanders. But more frightening to the police is the fact that all the emigrants' relatives were also infected. This means the virus spreads very quickly and kills the host within 48 hours. Caddy finds the boys in a rat lab. It seems the danger is over, but the doctor informs her that the quarantine is extended for 2 days and no one will be able to leave the hospital earlier. During the report, Dr. Connor informs the police that they have identified the virus. He assures them that traces of the pathogen were found in the Zero patient's personal belongings, and it all looks like an attempt to deliberately cause an infection. Teresa arrives at the train station to leave for her boyfriend's relatives, but unexpectedly, the train refuses to take new passengers and passes by. Upon learning that Jake is locked in the hospital, Alex directly asks Dr. Lorms about what is happening. The expert admits that a border is being established around the area that cannot be crossed for several days. By evening, panic begins in the city. People are surrounded by an iron fence, and many find themselves separated from their loved ones. Teresa learns that she and Xander are also on opposite sides of the cordon, and the girl will have to decide what to do next. Despite the measures taken, the number of infected continues to grow. At night, experts conduct an autopsy on the Zero patient and discover that the virus affects all vital organs. Furthermore, there is evidence that it takes only 48 hours from infection to the end. There is no chance of recovery, and if a vaccine is not found soon, the world faces serious trouble. Alex manages to contact Jenna and asks her to stay in a safe place. The girl decides to lock herself in her office. Returning to her mother's shop, Teresa calls Xander and tells him that she is okay. Despite this, the boy promises to find a way and get to her through the dangerous fence. Jenna is joined by her colleagues who did not manage to leave the city. Meanwhile, the girl's fiancé receives a warning that he should not break the rules due to personal attachments. Jake is asked to help the doctors sort through the belongings of the sick to find their relatives. Examining the Zero patient's mobile phone, the guy notices a frightening detail. A day before his death, the young man communicated with a blonde woman who had not been known about before. Jake immediately reports his findings to his colleagues, and the department decides to send a squad to search for the stranger. The police find the blonde's address, but her parents say she has not been seen since yesterday. Another emergency meeting is called, and everyone is ordered to find the girl within hours. While waiting for the doctor, Caddy listens to a news broadcast talking about the Zero patient and the doctors who contracted the virus from him. For the first time, the woman notices discrepancies, but her thoughts are interrupted by Dr. Connor, who assures the teacher that everything will end soon and she and the children will be able to go home. Leaving, Caddy still decides to ask about her suspicions. She was surprised that Dr. Sanders died before the Syrian who supposedly infected her, but Connor avoids answering, muttering something about differences in immunity. Jake is sent to find the girl, and the authorities hope to hide the fact that the infected person is behind the fence. But it is no longer possible to help the blonde. The cops find her in serious condition in the apartment of old friends. The blonde and her friends are taken to the quarantine zone. But Lorms admits to Alex that the situation is too serious. The virus spreads faster than they could have anticipated. Alex calls his fiancée to reassure her, but he does not dare to tell her what the city is facing. The police have been ordered to strengthen the cordon and use weapons in case of violations. More people with symptoms of infection continue to arrive at the hospital. Among them, Jake sees many children, but the doctor says that this is not the worst. The hospital is running out of free beds, and soon there will be nowhere to isolate the sick. In addition to the bad news, the officer has an unpleasant task. Connor asks him to cremate the bodies to prevent outbreaks of other diseases. Another problem for the authorities is Leo Green, a local journalist. He continues to publish panic-inducing videos, and Lormes instructs Alex to stop the provocateur. The cop tries to negotiate with Leo, but the journalist is sure that the authorities are hiding something, and he must get to the truth. A few minutes later, a new video from Green appears online, this time attracting the president's attention. Jenna's colleagues realize that they will not have enough food until the end of the quarantine, and the men decide to go to the store. The girl does not like this idea, but the majority votes to take the risk. Teresa's mother also takes the situation lightly. The girl sees her mother raising prices on essential goods to make a profit. To entertain the children, Caddy takes them to the roof. This gives everyone a chance to breathe fresh air, but the girl does not have time to relax. Thomas runs away, ignoring the teacher's cries. The girl finds the student on the stairs, next to a sick man. Drops fall on the boy, and it becomes clear that he is now infected. Thomas is sent to isolation, and the teacher blames herself. She tells the doctor that she promised the boy's father to take care of Thomas, but let him down. The men return with full bags of groceries, but Jenna does not let them into the office. She notices that her friend took off his gloves, meaning he could have brought the virus on his hands. A customer who was charged too much brings her friends. They raid the store, but Teresa's mother is saved by Jake's appearance, who received orders to patrol the city. Caddy finds Thomas's ward empty. She catches up with the boy at the hospital exit, and his father refuses to leave his son in the quarantine zone. The doctors have no choice but to let the patient go. Alex's pleas have no effect on Leo, and in pursuit of a hot story, he allows his colleagues to leave the closed area. He is not even frightened by the fact that one of the girls has symptoms of the disease. Alex and Jake manage to meet secretly on neutral territory. Both guys are nervous, but they have to work together. Leo Green tells the whole world how to leave the closed area. The police have to hold back the crowd while workers cut the ladder. This leads to serious riots, and the cops have to open fire to kill. To prevent such incidents, the government shuts down the internet and phone communication, depriving everyone of the only joy, talking to each other. Caddy accidentally enters a closed room and learns the truth about the number of victims. Among them are her students. At the same time, Jenna also tries to get to the truth, and she assembles a radio phone to call Alex. The girl has to climb to the roof to get the antenna, where she meets Sam, a technician who hid on the roof to avoid infection. Alex changes partners and goes on night duty. In the middle of the night, he notices an intruder and asks him to stop. The criminal turns out to be Xander, who is trying to enter the danger zone to his fiancée, but the cop does not let him do it and pulls the trigger. The bullet turns out to be rubber, and Xander is simply taken to the hospital. The officer visits him and apologizes, but warns that he will do the same thing next time. Leo decides to take advantage of this. He is preparing a scandalous report about the abuse of power. The store is visited by robbers again, but this time Teresa is also in danger. However, unexpectedly, the women are saved by another gang planning to profit from the quarantine. By the end of the day, Xander's ward is empty. The nurse says he left with Leo Green, but Alex does not have time to stop them. The duty officer reports that the guy has entered the infection zone. Dr. Connor shows Jake the rats that were injected with the medicine. Unfortunately, right before the cop's eyes, the animal passes out, and the hope for a quick rescue disappears. Jenna manages to call Alex, but the call lasts only a few seconds. The girl does not have time to learn anything. Leo accidentally learns about the call. He again hints to the officer that he has taken the wrong side and should think about what is happening. In gratitude for his help, Leo asks Xander to visit his friends and record a video message with them. The guy completes the task and throws the flash drive over the wall, but on it, the journalist finds evidence that his friends are no longer alive. After this, Xander finally finds his fiancée, but raiders block his way. The general panic is compounded by a new problem: hunger. People's food supplies begin to run out, and the government is forced to find a solution. Walking down the corridor with her son, Caddy meets an old man who supplies the hospital with lab rats. The woman notices another inconsistency. She saw Bert with the rodents before the quarantine, but he assures her that this is not the case. Lammers asks Alex to organize food delivery to the danger zone. The policeman asks for time to prepare, but is refused. He must do it by tomorrow without explanation. Alex has to ask Jake for help. The guy is also not thrilled with the idea, but they have no other choice. Early in the morning, the loading begins, and hundreds of people come to get their rations. The gang from the store also gathers for the distribution, and the leader orders Xander to go with them to stay clean. Jenna goes outside for the first time in many days to get some food. She approaches the distribution center, but a gangster car passes by, making her uneasy. Jake recognizes his friend and gives her a ration without a cue. He also hands her Alex's keys and asks her to hold on, as everything should end soon. Constantly thinking about the epidemic and inconsistencies, Caddy again turns to the doctor with questions, but he is clearly not willing to talk about it. The doctor assures the teacher that he knows no more about the virus than she does. The humanitarian point is surrounded by the store gang. There are many more bandits, and they take the food boxes to sell them to hungry people later. Alex is furious that the leadership did not listen to him, and the products fell into the hands of bandits. But Lammers does not see this as a problem. She believes that residents still have a chance to buy food and satisfy their hunger. Jake's partner turns out to be infected, and the officer offers him help, but the officer refuses to go to the hospital. He knows that no one can help him, and decides to solve the problem on his own. Returning to the shelter, Jenna falls into the hands of other bandits who also try to take the box. The woman is saved by Sam, whom she recently refused to let into the office, but the friends remember Jenna's recent act and, despite everything, do not let her or Sam into the clean zone. Alex and Jake meet again, and the senior partner admits that he no longer trusts the leadership. He tells his friend that, due to the robbery, he had to leave his subordinate in the danger zone. At this moment, this very subordinate calls Chief Esser and reports that their plan worked. Jake tells Caddy that she was right, something is being hidden from them. Dr. Sanders and her boyfriend had no personal belongings, but the conversation has to be postponed. Thomas's sister is admitted to the hospital, asking the teacher to find the boy. Their father died, and Thomas is left alone. Alex also begins to doubt the leadership's honesty, and he goes to Leo's house to hear his version. He finds the journalist drunk, but the guy comes to his senses and promises to help in the search for answers. Despite Jacob's persuasion, Caddy goes in search of Thomas. The gang is joined by the very cop sent by the police chief. He promises the bandits a radio phone in exchange for being accepted into the group. Thomas is not at home, but Caddy discovers her son, who secretly followed her. Quentin tells his mother that he knows where to look for his friend, and the company heads to the baseball field. The search for the truth has to be postponed. Alex is tasked with removing a man from an empty house who is preventing it from being demolished. The cop has to spend a lot of time talking about the happy past the city has lost. Teresa's mother helps the lovers escape. She gives the couple a bag of baby things and tells them to wait for her in a safe place. The company finds Thomas's things, but they are surrounded by a crowd of crazy racers. Jake has to open fire, and only then do the young people continue to search for the boy. Caddy finds her son and his friend, but they are near an infected man. The teacher is frightened, but Thomas assures her that he cannot get infected. Xander and Teresa come to Jenna's office and ask for shelter. One of the girl's friends is against the couple entering, but Jenna lets the guests in without his approval. Thomas is placed in isolation, but Caddy has hope that the boy indeed has immunity and can save everyone. During the meeting, Alex hands Jake a flash drive with a damaged file. If it can be restored, they will learn the truth, but only Jenna can do it. In return, the officer also receives a memory card with a message for the old man from the empty house. When he delivers the message, the stubborn man cannot hold back his tears. Teresa sorts through the baby things and finds the radio phone her mother stole. At that moment, the phone's owners appear at the door, holding a gun to the girl's mother's head. The company has to open the door, but the bandit refuses to take the phone and leave. He demands that Teresa and her boyfriend go with him. Unexpectedly, Jake comes to the rescue. He convinces the gangster to leave the office alone. Alex sees hundreds of people moving in an unknown direction, but no one can say where they will be placed. Jenna tries to open the file, but it is severely damaged. The girl does not have time to do anything with it. New guests appear in the office, a gang wanting access to prohibited drugs. The company begins to strengthen their shelter, but the intruders find weak spots through which they manage to penetrate inside. Tony decides to take a risk. He goes down to negotiate with the criminals, but the negotiations fail. The elevator returns Tony with an axe in his back. In addition to the deceased guy, one of the attackers enters the office, but he does not have time to harm anyone. The guy is infected and collapses at the entrance to the room. Jenna finally manages to restore the file, but the girl does not have time to watch it. The power goes out in the office, and all the doors are locked. To restore power, Jenna has to leave the shelter and go downstairs. Meanwhile, the bandits almost manage to open the elevator doors, but the girl raises the switch in time. On the way back, Jenna takes the radio phone and calls Alex. Talking to his fiancée, the officer hears her being attacked. The girl manages to break free and return to the office, but the intruders do not retreat and try to cut through the door. The company has no choice but to come up with the craziest plan. Alex tries to penetrate the closed zone to help his fiancée, but he is caught by the National Guard soldiers. Jenna orders everyone to take cover, and when the psychos burst into the office, Jake activates an explosive device. A fire starts, but all the attackers are unconscious. Unexpectedly, one of them jumps up and attacks Teresa's mother. The men manage to neutralize him, but the woman is infected. Alex is arrested, but unaware of this, Jenna asks Jake to call her fiancé and calm him down. She also mentions that the phone the bandits had has a government military number and they need to figure out how it ended up in the infection zone. Teresa's mother leaves. As a farewell, she asks her daughter for forgiveness for not wanting to accept her child. More than 48 hours have passed since Thomas's contact with the infected, and the boy continues to look healthy. His DNA is implanted in rats to try to create a vaccine. Connor reports his observations to the leadership, but the boss tells the guy that they don't have time for experiments. Caddy and Jake review footage from surveillance cameras and find out that the zero patient was not the immigrant boy, but a certain Henry Burns. He came every morning to secretly meet with Dr. Sanders, and judging by the man's behavior, he knew about his illness. Dr. Connor allows Thomas to leave and informs everyone that the boy does not just have immunity, his body defeated the virus. This means that based on his DNA, they will be able to make a cure for the unknown virus. Jenna leads her friends to a church under which there are ancient tunnels. The girl plans to lead the group out of the cordon through them to safety. Alex tells Leo everything he learned from Jake, but the journalist cannot find any trace of Henry Burns. The men get the impression that the zero patient was deliberately sent to the hospital. Lammers returns Alex's badge and authority, but in return she demands that the cop take Thomas out of the infected zone and hand him over for experiments in her unit. Dr. Connor disagrees with Lammers' decision, but she rejects all objections and insists that only her laboratory can find the cure. Everyone has hope for a quick return to peace and normal life. It seems not everyone will live to see this happy moment, but some decide not to waste time and enjoy the moment, using all possible safety measures. Leo finds out that 2 days before the epidemic started, Burns received a package with the virus. Now he wants to know who the sender was, but Alex asks him to postpone the investigation so he can carry out the order. All night the company breaks through the exit to the tunnel, and in the morning they finally go underground. At the same time, Caddy and Jake go to the meeting place to hand Thomas over to Alex. Dr. Connor realizes he was wrong. The patient bitten by a rat injected with Thomas's DNA is infected. During the seizure, he infects several more people, and the doctor understands that the boy is an asymptomatic carrier. If he leaves the cordon, the virus will take over the entire city. The company has to return due to gas that has accumulated underground. They remain in the infection zone. Meanwhile, Thomas ends up in the hold the zone between districts. He is met by Alex and Dr. Lammers, but at the last moment, the transfer is cancelled and the boy is sent back. While Alex tries to figure out what to do next, he receives a voice message from Leo. The journalist claims that the virus was created by Connor. Alex and Lammers remain in quarantine in the container between the zones. Thomas is returned to the clinic and quarantined to figure out what to do next. Jenna's company returns. The group could not go underground due to accumulated gas, but the office is empty. Teresa and Xander left to find a cleaner place. On the main street, the guy begins to suspect he was wrong. Hundreds of protesters are holding a rally demanding to be released from the infected zone. Xander tries to protect the girl from the crowd, but Teresa sees her mother in the crowd and tries to break through to her. Not wanting to risk his pregnant girlfriend, the guy decides to check who she saw in the crowd. Jake arranges a date for Caddy and the couple has a great time until a frightened Quentin runs into the room. The boy says that old man Ray took the other children and led them out of the hospital to break through with the others. Leo meets with an ex-girlfriend and asks her to get Connor's call details. He has no doubt that the doctor's to blame, but to prove it, he needs facts. Xander realizes that Teresa was mistaken, but as a result, he encounters an infected person. The boy manages to escape. Unlike Bert, the old man has his box of medicine taken from him and falls to the ground. The street riots intensify and a squad is sent to the danger zone. Lammers tries to stop the captain, but he does not listen to the doctor's orders, and several vehicles head through the cordon. Jake finds Ray, but the girl he took with him is not there. The old man abandoned her because of virus symptoms. Caddy spots Mary before Jake can tell her about the infection, and the woman takes the child into her arms despite the blood. The crazed crowd pushes Teresa to the ground. Xander runs to her but is afraid to touch his girlfriend for fear of infecting her. When Jake finds his friend, it becomes clear that she is now also sick. Caddy realizes this from her boyfriend's look and upon returning to the hospital, tries to wash off all traces of the infection. Leo gets the information he needs, but it does not match his assumptions. Moreover, his friend tells the journalist that Burns called someone on an encrypted phone that only high-ranking officials can have that day. Susie, Jenna's friend, confesses that she is expecting a baby. Going for a test to check this, Jenna meets Xander and Teresa, who stayed on the street after the riot. Caddy ends up in isolation, and Jake tries to support her, but the girl's nerves can no longer withstand it. After 48 hours, Dr. Lammers and Alex are released from the container. There are only 8 hours left until the end of Caddy's quarantine. At the same time, Teresa's baby is about to be born. Alex visits Leo and finds out that on the day of the infection, Burns did not call Connor, but Lammers. There is no doubt that she started the epidemic for some personal purpose. Dr. Connor conducts his first round after leaving isolation. When he reaches Caddy, he admits that he cannot release her. The onset of symptoms has increased, and 48 hours is no longer a guarantee of health. The soldiers who participated in stopping the riot were infected. Lammers reports this to the journalists, but she promises to find a cure and save the country. At Alex's request, Jake inspects the apartment of Leo's friends, who were also investigating. There he finds ashes, all that remains of the documents and evidence. When friends meet to discuss this, Alex realizes that Lammers and the police chief are involved. Dennis, the father of Susan's child, returns to the office, but the man shows signs of infection on his face, and the company refuses to let him in. To make it easier for the man, Susan tells him that there was a mistake. She is not pregnant, and he has nothing to blame himself for. Alex meets with the chief and says he knows the truth, but it turns out that Besser did not know that Lammers released the virus into the masses. Jenna and Susan fail to ease Teresa's pain, but as usual, Jake appears at the right time. The guy calms the young mother and helps her daughter be born. Alex asks Leo not to publish material against Lammers until they have substantial evidence. An argument begins between the men, and the journalist agrees to wait no more than 2 hours. Not wanting to waste time, Alex goes directly to the doctor and asks her to resign. Lammers tries to intimidate the officer, but when she realizes he is not joking, the woman promises to hold a conference and leave her post. Teresa shows Xander their daughter, and the baby is placed in a crib made of boxes. Jake tells Caddy about this joyful event, but the girl's delight is overshadowed by a cough with traces of blood. Lammers gives a press conference, but does not admit her guilt. She claims that Dr. Connor accidentally released the virus. Still unaware of this, Connor conducts experiments and tries to find a cure. Jake asks him to try to save Caddy, and the doctor agrees to give her a trial dose of serum from Thomas's blood. Old man Bert regains consciousness and discovers that his leg is broken. Despite this, he finds the box of medicine and tries to get home, where his wife has been waiting for him all this time. Connor learns what Lammers did. He does not understand why his colleague did this to him, but despite this, the doctor does not give up trying to save Caddy. Giving her the injection, Connor tells the girl how the virus penetrated their clinic. Jenna meets Bert and gives him her water. She also gives the old man a cart so he can finally reach his wife. After the injection, Caddy gets worse. She is tormented by nightmares and barely waits until morning. To support his friend, Jake brings a TV and invites her to the movies. The couple spends the whole day together, but Caddy gets worse again, and she decides to confess her love to her boyfriend, fearing that there may not be another chance. Jenna tells her friend about her conversation with the gangsters. Trader Miz offered her a route to the healthy zone, but it is very expensive. Sam agrees to contribute his share, but only if Jenna agrees to leave the others and go with him. Alex goes to Leo's apartment, which turns out to be empty. After losing, the journalist refused to fight Lammers, but later the cop receives a pizza from a friend in which Leo left him a note with an address and a key. Caddy gets worse by the minute, and Jake prepares to say goodbye to his friend. He asks the doctor to help him put on a protective suit, and when the girl falls to the floor, the boyfriend takes her hand to ease her suffering. The doctor tells Jake that he can say goodbye to Caddy's body, which is waiting for cremation. For the first time since their acquaintance, the guy manages to touch his friend's face without gloves. Jenna tells her friends about the opportunity to leave and suggests finding the money. But Teresa refuses to go. She wants her daughter to grow up a little. Arriving at the address Leo sent him, Alex finds evidence that will help him punish Lammers. Teresa, Xander, and their newborn daughter reach Bert's house, Teresa's grandfather. The young mother plans to stay at her relative's house until the end of quarantine, but seeing the empty shelves, Xander insists that they must run. Alex learns about a certain Catherine Hops, whose son was connected with Lammers. From her, the man learns the address of the laboratory and heads there. While Dr. Connor tries to create a cure, news about him spreads throughout the zone. A gang breaks into the clinic wanting to punish the doctor, but Jake convinces them that he needs to be protected to be the first to get the vaccine. This is the last thing Jake can do before leaving. He decides to run through the cordon to save Quentin. Alex inspects the abandoned lab and finds solid evidence of Lammers' guilt. He accuses her and names a True Zero patient who fell ill several years ago. This time, Lammers does not argue. She admits she created the virus and believes it is needed for the country's safety. But now she asks Alex to postpone the battle and focus on fighting the virus, which has now crossed the cordon. An attack occurs in the hospital, and one of the gangsters becomes infected. Dr. Connor has to give him the test drug. It is his only chance not to become a victim of the bandits. Jake prepares Quentin to cross into the healthy zone and promises to find him as soon as it is all over. Jenna's company also prepares to go underground to cross the cordon. At the same time, the body of the boy who tried to take the risk is examined, and an army is assembled so that no one else can cross the border. To prevent illegal crossings, the tunnels are mined and blown up. Alex tries to stop it, understanding that there may be people there, but the captain refuses to make concessions. Unaware of the government's plans, Miz orders the fugitives to prepare to descend into the tunnel. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Dr. Connor transfuses Thomas's blood to the infected gangster, hoping this will cure him. Despite all attempts, the gangster cannot be saved. Because of this, Jake has to save the doctor. The gang leader cannot forgive him for the loss of his brother. The explosions catch the group deep in the tunnel. The ceiling begins to collapse, and the company is divided. Teresa, Xander, and their baby are left alone. Connor finds a way to make the medicine, but for this he needs people with the same blood as Thomas. Jake tries to find volunteers, but no one wants to participate in the dangerous experiment. Then the guy prepares a speech in which he names all the dead. For their sake, Jake asks people to get tested and, in case of a match, become donors. Miz leads the group to a dead end, but the guide does not give up and looks for new exits. Alex learns about this and asks Lammers to stop the explosions and bring people to the surface. As an exception, Lammers promises the officer 1 hour. After that, all tunnels will be destroyed. Jake's words convince people and they gather to get tested. Xander takes his family to Teresa's mother's store, and the girl decides to stay there until the end. The doctor finds blood with antibodies. A local priest can be a donor for the medicine. Old man Bert spills the last bottle of wine and adds a secret ingredient to it. He and his wife raise their glasses to toast that their suffering ends. Hugging on the couch, the couple prepares to go to a better world. Alex finds the fugitives, among whom he sees Jenna. The girl assures her fiancé will let them into the clean zone, but Alex does not know what to do. His time is running out. Dr. Lammers orders the tunnels destroyed, but at this moment, Leo's report about everything the blonde did appears on the screens. Alex does not let the fugitives go, but returns to the quarantine zone with them. And Jake, scattering Caddy's ashes over the city, prepares for a new battle with the virus that changed the world. The story is set in a world grappling with a unique and terrifying epidemic. This epidemic, which has baffled scientists and experts for over 8 years, is spread through language and speech, making communication dangerous. The main symptom of the disease begins with a high fever, eventually causing the afflicted to speak incoherently, descending into madness. As a precaution, people have resorted to wearing headsets constantly, as the disease can be transmitted by hearing the speech of the infected. Those affected by the illness, known as jabbers, are swiftly quarantined and forcibly separated from their families, leading to public outrage and distress. The story introduces Murat, a linguist whose life has been profoundly altered by the pandemic. Isolated and lonely, he lives with his mother in an apartment, his life reduced to a series of cautious routines. Each day, Murat meticulously checks his temperature, a ritual that underscores the constant fear of infection. One day, Murat's attention is drawn to Sul, a young woman immersed in a book at a bus stop. Time seems to stand still as Murat is captivated by her presence. However, the moment is broken when she notices his prolonged gaze. Realizing he's been staring, Murat awkwardly shouts that no bus is coming and quickly departs, heading back home. The narrative continues as Murat, despite his reluctance, leaves his home to buy soap for his mother. While at the supermarket, he encounters an old woman who suddenly turns around and speaks incoherently, a clear sign of being a jabber. An alarm is triggered, announcing the presence of a jabber and urging people to evacuate immediately. In the ensuing chaos, everyone flees, except for the old woman and a young boy who is left behind without a headset. Murat witnesses the boy's mother crying outside. Driven by a sense of responsibility, Murat bravely re-enters the supermarket, gives his headset to the boy, and makes a narrow escape. Remarkably, Murat manages to avoid contracting the epidemic. Despite his close encounter with the jabber, he experiences a high fever but eventually recovers and returns home unscathed, soap in hand. Meanwhile, Anton, a high-ranking official at AEI, is desperately seeking a solution to the pandemic. He faces a setback upon learning that even young children are susceptible to the disease. However, his interest is piqued when he hears about Murat's incident at the supermarket. Intrigued by the possibility that Murat might be immune, Anton delves into surveillance footage to learn more. He observes Murat collapsing in the supermarket, but later continuing on as if unharmed, which deepens Anton's confusion and curiosity. In another part of the city, Murat visits the home of his mother's friend, responding to a desperate call for help. The friend's son, Arif's father, is exhibiting symptoms of the disease, speaking disconnectedly. Arif, holding on to hope, pleads with Murat to find a cure, believing in Murat's unique abilities. He even suggests collaborating with Murat's friend Ozgur, but Murat informs him that Ozgur has passed away. Arif, skeptical about Ozgur's death due to the lack of a proper funeral and the absence of his body, plans to meet with Errol, a businessman known for trading in information. Arif hopes Errol can shed light on whether Ozgur is indeed alive and assist in their quest for a cure. Meanwhile, Anton takes a deep dive into investigating the mysterious case of the headset left with a child at the supermarket. He discovers that the headset belongs to Murat, a linguist who was working on the pandemic case, but vanished after a disastrous fire that claimed the lives of his team. Intrigued, Anton intensifies his investigation. Delving further, Anton uncovers records of Murat visiting the emergency room with severe fever more than 12 times. Using video footage from the supermarket, along with a temperature detector, Anton confirms his suspicions. Murat is immune to the pandemic. He deduces this from the fact that Murat has surpassed the critical threshold of 4 high fever encounters, a significant discovery given Murat's 12 instances. In the meantime, Murat, spurred by Arif's belief in Ozgur's survival, decides to investigate further. He meets a businessman who offers them access to AEI's resources, allowing them to gather information independently and save costs. With newfound determination, Murat boldly infiltrates the AEI headquarters and navigates his way to the information hub downstairs. There, Murat searches for Ozgur's name and is initially disheartened to find records indicating his death. He clicks on the autopsy image damage, expecting the worst, but is surprised to see an unrecognizable burnt face with no identifiable tattoo on the wrist. This absence of a tattoo, which Murat knows his friend had, rekindles his hope that Osgur might still be alive. Before leaving the hub room, Murat impulsively searches for his own name in the database. To his shock and dismay, he discovers video footage of himself from the supermarket incident. Realizing the potential danger of this discovery, Murat hastily exits the room, unable to delete the record. His escape is filled with anxiety and urgency, knowing that his presence in the AEI database could have unforeseen and dangerous consequences. Soon after, Anton, fueled by his significant discovery regarding Murat's immunity to the pandemic, eagerly approaches his superior to share his findings. However, his excitement quickly turns to frustration when his superior dismisses his claims, cautioning against spreading unverified rumors. Frustrated by this response and determined to pursue the matter further, Anton decides to take matters into his own hands. He acquires the address of Murat and his mother's home, although under a false name, and sets out with his men to capture Murat. Upon arriving at the destination, they find Murat's mother answering the door, mistakenly assuming it might be her son. However, the AEI forces swiftly invade the home, scattering throughout the house and the apartment complex. They strategically position themselves, lying in wait for Murat's return to spring their trap. Unnoticed by the AEI operatives, Murat's mother subtly places a prearranged signal on the window, a discreet method of communication between her and her son. She then calmly lights a cigarette and sits down, maintaining an air of composure despite the tense situation. Meanwhile, Murat, who had been waiting for another glimpse of the beautiful girl he had seen at the bus stop, returns home. As he approaches his apartment, he notices the signal from his mother. Realizing the imminent danger, he hesitates at the entrance. Inside, Anton and his team are eagerly anticipating Murat's arrival, ready to execute their well-laid plans. In a moment of inner conflict, Murat grapples with the decision to enter the apartment. His thoughts drift to the beautiful girl, and the realization dawns on him that if he walks into the trap, he might never see her again. This thought acts as a turning point, and in a swift decision, Murat chooses to flee in the opposite direction, much to Anton's dismay. His abrupt departure catches Anton and his men off guard, and they lose track of him in mere seconds. Back at Murat's house, Anton seizes the opportunity to collect Murat's belongings for further investigation, hoping to get more insight into Murat's unique situation. The next morning, as Murat sets out on his search for Osgur, he is stopped by AEI forces demanding to see his ID. In a moment of tension, as Murat nervously reaches for his ID, a bomb suddenly explodes nearby, causing the AEI forces to scatter and leaving Murat unattended. Seizing the moment, Murat heads to a location where he believes he might find Osgur. However, his hopes are dashed when he discovers Osgur is not there. Speaking with the man who made Osgur's distinctive tattoo, Murat learns that since Osgur's death, others have been imitating the tattoo, diminishing his chances of finding Osgur. Meanwhile, Anton meticulously reviews tape recordings overnight and stumbles upon a recording of Murat claiming that he is incapable of jabbering, even if he wanted to. This revelation prompts Anton to rush to AEI to share his findings with a colleague. However, upon his arrival, Anton is informed that his boss Fazil is waiting for him. In a confrontational meeting, Fazil sternly instructs him to withdraw from the case. During this time, Murat finds comfort in a conversation with an old man who offers him a drink. As they share this moment, the old man tries to alleviate Murat's guilt over his wife's tragic death, which occurred after she was affected by the pandemic. He reassures Murat that it wasn't his fault. Murat listens in silence, eventually sharing his plans to venture into Zone 6 in his relentless search for Osgur. Soon, Murat seeks the help of Errol, a man introduced to him by Arif. Errol is known for his willingness to do anything for money, and Murat needs him to create a false ID. They arrange to meet the following day. Afterward, Murat visits Arif's house, where he expresses his determination to find Osgur and their shared goal of discovering a cure for the epidemic. Before he leaves, Arif's grandmother generously gives him some money, while his mother having no cash, gives him her necklace as a token of support. However, their movements do not go unnoticed. One of Anton's men spots Murat and promptly informs Anton, who instructs his team to tail him discreetly. The next day, Murat meets Errol as planned to collect his forged ID. Just as they complete the transaction, Errol receives an alert that AEI forces are closing in on their location. In a frantic rush, they escape, successfully evading Anton and his team, who later search the warehouse to no avail. With his new fake ID in hand, Murat heads to the subway station, bound for the less monitored Zone 6. He smoothly passes the initial security checkpoint using the fake ID. However, his sense of safety is short-lived, as a security guard becomes suspicious upon recognizing Murat's face from wanted posters in the subway. In a coincidental twist, Sul, who Murat has been longing to see again, suddenly appears in front of him. To his astonishment and delight, she kisses him right there in the subway, creating a moment of confusion for the pursuing security guard. This unexpected encounter leaves Murat feeling ecstatic. Holding hands, they continue their journey on the subway, embarking on a path filled with uncertainty, yet united in their unexpected connection. Murat and Sul, having left the bus stop, navigate through menacing people and areas until they find a secluded rooftop where they can talk privately. On the rooftop, Murat, preoccupied with his quest to find Ozgur, is about to leave when Sul insists he stay for a meal. During their conversation, he learns her name and he expresses gratitude for her assistance earlier. Sul then reveals her true intentions. She had been following Murat purposefully, hoping to recruit him into her team, P1, which is dedicated to finding a cure for the pandemic. Surprised by this revelation, Murat abruptly leaves, not allowing her to finish explaining. Later, Murat returns to the home he shares with his wife, where he is flooded with memories as he wanders through each room. That night, he dreams of himself torn between his wife and Sul, symbolizing his internal conflict. The next morning, Murat's search for Ozgur takes an unexpected turn when he is kidnapped by masked individuals who question his identity and affiliation with the AEI. At this critical moment, Sul intervenes, assuring them that Murat is not with the AEI and is on a personal mission. Murat convinces them of his intentions, and they agree to share information if they cross paths with Ozgur. Sul then brings Murat to his studio where she works, and after apologizing for the earlier misunderstanding, she hosts a podcast. In the broadcast, she discusses the AEI's cruel practices, relating them to the unjust death of her boyfriend, and concludes by emphasizing the importance of finding a cure to end the crisis. Meanwhile, Anton retreats to his house, where his wife and son are quarantined in the basement due to the pandemic. While there, Anton senses he is being watched. Upon investigating, he finds no one, unaware that Fazil's right-hand agent is covertly observing him from a hiding spot. Somewhere else, Murat and Sul's journey through the pandemic-stricken streets of the city continues. While walking downtown, Murat demonstrates his unusual resistance to the pandemic by briefly removing his headset near Jabber's, showcasing how his skull heats up without experiencing the usual symptoms. This unique ability intrigues Sul, who sees potential in Murat's immunity. That night, Murat stays at the studio with Sul, and upon waking up the next morning, he finds himself surrounded by the team Sul had mentioned. The team members introduce themselves and request Murat's assistance. Initially hesitant, Murat warms up to the idea when Sul assures him that joining the team could aid in his quest to find Ozgur. As part of their ongoing search for Ozgur, Murat and Sul come across a hotel displaying the symbol that Murat associates with Ozgur. They decide to investigate by entering the hotel and seeking an audience with the hotel's boss. However, their encounter quickly turns dangerous. In a moment of quick thinking, Murat leverages his past experience and knowledge of recording voices to offer the boss a rare tape. This move impresses the boss, diffusing the tension and earning them a chance to sit and talk. As Murat and Sul are about to explain their quest for Ozgur, their conversation is interrupted by a lady entering the room to deliver an item and collect payment. After she leaves, the boss encourages them to continue. Murat and Sewell reveal their search for the person associated with the symbol they possess. To their surprise, the boss informs them that the lady who just left was the one who brought the symbol to the hotel. Reacting quickly, Murat and Sewell rush outside to catch the lady, but they are too late. She drives away, showing no interest in engaging with them. This missed opportunity leaves Murat and Sewell with more questions than answers as they continue their journey in the uncertain and dangerous world. My friends, the continuation of the story is now on the screen in front of you.
Welcome to the show.
A man is running through a dark forest in Ireland. He seems frightened despite constantly encountering signs with the words "point of no return" and various numbers, indicating either directions or distances to something. However, he fails to escape. Darkness quickly envelops the surroundings, a flock of birds flies overhead, and he falls into a pit. In the next moment, an invisible force grabs him and drags him away. Elsewhere in the country lives an artist named Minna, who works in a pet store. One day, her boss asks her to deliver a rare parrot to a zoo in a neighboring city, and Minna agrees. She takes the bird home for the night. There, she tells the parrot that her mother died 15 years ago. Suddenly, the bird starts to respond. In the evening, Minna puts on a wig and goes to a bar where she introduces herself to a guy with a fictitious name, claiming to be a ballerina. In the morning, Minna apologizes to the parrot for her behavior, saying the real her would probably not be liked. Finally, the pair set off on their journey. On the way, her sister Lucy calls, reminding her that she has family and nieces who love and await her. Minna continues driving and eventually ends up on a road leading into an old dark forest. Unexpectedly, the car breaks down and stalls, and the connection also mysteriously cuts off. Taking the parrot's cage, Minna steps onto the road to seek help, but the forest is dark and empty. When she returns to where she left the car, the road is deserted. Minna continues to wander through the quickly darkening area, talking to the bird to keep herself cheerful and suggesting they name it Darwin. Suddenly, she notices a woman running past and decides to follow her. Minna catches up with her near a small forest cabin, and the woman, opening the door, orders her to come inside quickly if she wants to live. Naturally, Minna rushes into the cabin. The elderly woman is named Madeline. She has been living here for some time with two other young people, Ciara and Daniel. She immediately orders Minna to stand in front of a mirror because the watchers cannot enter inside but observe from outside, coming every night after sunset. Standing by the mirror, Minna suddenly hears sounds like applause. Madeline confirms her suspicions. The watchers are applauding the appearance of a new object. In the morning, Minna announces that she intends to leave. Although the others assure her it's impossible, she heads into the forest. Madeline catches up with her, explaining that the forest causes hallucinations, but it is possible to survive here. The signs scattered throughout the forest mark the boundary from which a person can reach the cabin before dark. But if you go beyond the boundary, there will be no way back. They were made by a man named the Professor. But where he is now, no one knows. That night, Daniel puts on a show for the watchers, presenting them with the newcomer, but they ask her to behave as usual. Meanwhile, Ciara turns on the music and dances, as she does every evening. Minna, on the other hand, finds discs with recordings of Love Search TV shows. In the morning, she and Ciara go to gather medicinal herbs because her missing husband asked the girl to take care of Daniel. Then the man went to search for a way out and disappeared. Ciara explains that recently they found strange burrows scattered throughout the forest. That's where the watchers go during daylight hours. She believes she has been in the cabin for almost 5 months. Later, Madeline announces the safety rules. Never leave at night, never open the doors for anyone, always try to stay in the light. Strange life begins with entirely identical days. Minna watches endless shows and often stands staring into the mirror. One day she knocks on it, and immediately there is a knock on the door. Madeline orders everyone to freeze and everything stops. The next day she and Daniel go hunting. The boy tells her that Madeline used to work at the university, so she considers herself a know-it-all. But she has been living here the longest. Daniel himself has been in the cabin for 8 months, but has never seen anyone. After listening to the boy, Minna convinces Daniel to help her explore a burrow. Using a rope, Minna descends, explores it, and finds old items, newspapers, toys, pieces of electronics, and an old bicycle, which she ties to the rope and sends up. But then strange sounds, similar to those heard at night outside the cabin walls, echo from the darkness. Minna screams and the rope falls at her feet. Climbing out into the light, Minna leaves the dangerous place, and they calmly examine the items. With the bicycle, it might be possible to escape from here. But Madeline has a rather strange reaction to this. Meanwhile, Daniel manages to assemble a surveillance system from the found pieces of electronics and installs a camera by the door. At night, everything goes as usual. Ciara dances when there is a knock on the door, and Daniel suggests that a person has come. Madeline forbids opening it, but they hear the voice of Ciara's husband. Ciara tries to prove that it is John by asking him what book she is reading, but he does not answer. Although they bought this book together on his advice, the man begs to be saved from death. Ciara asks to look into the camera, but when he leans towards it, something drags him into the forest. Immediately there is a knock on the mirror, stronger than ever before. Madeline stands in front of the people, as if shielding them, and the knocking stops. In the morning, Madeline throws the bicycle into the burrow, demanding that they no longer break the rules. Later, Mina recalls her sister and mother, who invited the girls for a car ride. The weather was beautiful and Mina opened the window. Her mother asked her to close it because the wind was bothering her, but Mina didn't listen, mimicking her mother, who got distracted from the road. The tragedy happened, for which Mina still feels guilty. Winter soon arrived. The days grew shorter, the nights colder, and food became increasingly scarce. Quarrels began to flare up among the cabin's inhabitants. One day, Ciara left for the forest. Mina caught up with her, and she confessed that she felt John was real. She runs to the house from where Daniel's screams are heard, angry with Madeline and Mina, refusing to let them inside. The women hide under a tree and soon see lanky, spider-like monsters emerging from the forest, approaching the cabin window, and making terrible shrill noises. The watchers stare at Daniel and Ciara while Mina and Madeline wait for them to leave so they can return to the cabin. When they do, the women rush to the door and beg to be let in. Daniel refuses, and then Mina tells him about her guilt towards her mother. She asks him to understand that he will suffer all his life, realizing that he is responsible for the death of people. The doors open. The four of them immediately stand in front of the mirror, hoping to convince the watchers that they are in place. Madeline admits that she tried to protect them from certain things. She used to teach history and mythology, and unlike them, came here voluntarily. Only here did she realize how dangerous this place was. Once she hunted alone and saw herself at sunset. Not an exact copy, but very similar. The Watchers are an ancient species with many names: changelings, winged ones, fairies. They study people to impersonate them, and they will never let them leave. Knocks and the voices of the cabin's inhabitants are heard outside. Then Daniel finds a hatch in the floor, which they didn't even know existed. Descending, they discover a well-fortified and equipped living space filled with food and equipment. Mina turns on an old computer, and a video recording shows the face of the professor, whose real name was Rory Kilmartin. He was the first to study the Watchers and tried to learn about their origins. In 1979, the scientist found this place, which he called Wonderlamp. Every evening, the Watchers came to his window and studied him. For many years before this, the professor's colleagues laughed at him, not believing his tales. Then he built this bunker, using the labor of men from nearby remote villages. He chose the lonely or those with bad habits so that their disappearance would not attract much attention, as every evening he convinced them to have dinner outdoors. Hiding inside, he watched the Watchers deal with them. Thus this bunker was built on blood. One day, a Watcher appeared before him in the form of a girl with red hair. She was very different from the others, as if she were unique and looked curious and harmless. That's when he realized that if he unlocked the secrets of the fairies, he might even conquer death. He did the impossible, lured this girl into a cage and began experiments on communication, trying to befriend her. She changed form, sometimes turning into a frightening creature with long arms, but seemed to listen to him. Gradually, she became close and understandable to him, but now the professor realized he had achieved nothing significant and was ready to end his life. He hid a boat by the river, and this is the only way out. Just follow the birds. He asked the survivor to go to his university office and destroy all the documents found there, and now he will go to her and stay here forever. In the last recording, they see Kilmartin climbing up. Gunshots are heard, and then all is quiet. Realizing that this is their last night in the forest, Ciara turns on the music and invites Daniel to dance, but he seems upset about leaving. He says his family is dysfunctional and he has nowhere to return to. Then the girl offers to let him stay with her for a while until they find him a good occupation and place to live, as they have become good friends. In the morning, the group sets out to escape, guided by the signs and Mina's parrot, whom she asked to lead them. Soon they reach a massive stone disc in the ground, covering the entrance to a huge tunnel. Madeline explains that this is where the last representatives of the ancient fairy race were locked up. who were once very friendly with humans. After many centuries, they managed to surface, but now the friendship has turned into hatred. They stay here because they are held by magic, so they need to run far away. They walk all day. Dusk falls, but there is no river or boat in sight. It starts raining, and they fall into despair when they see huge flocks of birds flying in one direction. They run after them and reach the river. The women rush to the boat when Daniel hears screams behind him and sees John. He returns for him, rejoicing that the man survived, but it turns out to be a changeling. The women scream, begging Daniel to run, but he doesn't hear and dies at the hands of the Watcher, who then takes on his form while Madeline, Mina, and Ciara sail down the river. The women wake up in the boat and see that they have returned to civilization. They stop a bus and ride to the city, listening to music and only now realizing that it's over. Later, Mina goes to the university where Kilmartin worked, posing as his niece to enter his office and fulfill his last request. There, she finds more documents, photos, and a recording in which he discusses the fairies and the fact that there are still half-blood children in the world. Mina finds a stack of photos and, looking at them, seems very surprised. In the evening, Mina goes to Ciara's house, showing a photo of Madeline from the professor's belongings, explaining that it is his wife who died several years ago. So the Madeline they lived with in the cabin was a special fairy capable of moving during the day. It was she whom Kilmartin caught. He couldn't kill her, and she took on Madeline's form to return to civilization. Then a car pulls up to the house, and the real Ciara gets out, while the one she's talking to is actually a fairy. Realizing she has been exposed, the fairy knocks Mina out and changes shape again, turning into Daniel. They just want to live like other species, but due to human hatred, they are forced to stay underground. The fairy turns into Kilmartin and goes to Mina. In the house, the fairy transforms into her and prepares to kill the girl. But Mina says that there are others like her somewhere because she is half human and acknowledges that it was unfair of humans to banish the fairies from their world. The fairy softens and spreads her wings, admitting that Mina might be right, and she flies away. Mina revives Ciara. Later, she reunites with her twin sister Lucy, finally forgiving herself for their mother's death. She tells her about her experience, admitting that she still sees Madeline appearing in the forms of other people. Her nieces arrive to show Mina a drawing of her and Darwin, whom she still keeps as a pet. Meanwhile, outside, a girl with red hair appears, looking at their apartment windows and taking on the form of a girl with a strange face. This is probably not a horror movie, but rather a scary bedtime story when a child doesn't want to sleep and asks for something frightening. Everything builds up slowly and tastefully, but the ending unfolds somewhat mundanely, although mysteriously. Turid Sayer, together with her teenage sons, Magne and Lauritz, returned to the Norwegian city of Edda after many years of absence. At the entrance to the city, their car gets stuck behind an old man in an electric wheelchair who is trying to turn right. Magne gets out of the car to help, and the old man's wife approaches him. Looking into the guy's eyes, she smiles with satisfaction. He's a good boy, and then she touches his forehead. Magne's iris changes color for a moment, and then the guy feels something unusual in the perception of the world. He returns to the car and, trying to close the window, breaks off the window lifter handle. Stunned, Magne turns the thing in his hands and suddenly says that it's going to rain. Mother and brother laugh. There is not a cloud in the sky, and immediately the car is showered with a heavy rain. They continue on their way and get to their grandmother's old house. Lauritz is not happy that there is a shabby-looking trailer near the house, and Magne picks up an advertisement that calls for making the air of the city cleaner. The next morning, the guys go to school. Oddly enough, the brothers are assigned to the same class. The thing is, Magne is dyslexic, which is expressed by difficulties with word recognition and insufficient abilities in reading and writing. Magne's attention is immediately drawn to a pretty blonde, Gry, but Lauritz is ahead of him, and Magne has to sit in the back of the class next to Isolde, who is not popular at school. A lesson on the Scandinavian gods begins, and Magne learns that Edda is the last Norwegian city to convert to Christianity. It was here that Ragnarok took place, during which the gods died, and the fate of the giants remained unknown. During lunch, Magne sits at Isolde's desk again and learns that she's on the side of the Greens and is fighting against the pollution of the world. She also introduces the guy to Fjord Utol as son of the owner of the Utol Industries factories, Fjord's sister Saxa, and their mother, the director of the school by the name of Ran. And then she talks about her blog on YouTube. At the end of the classes, the two leave school together, and then Isolde notices that one of the wheels in her bicycle is bent. Much to the girl's astonishment, Magne easily fixes the brake and returns the wheel to its original condition, which surprises him as well. In addition, he notices that his eyesight has begun to improve. The next day, he, Isolde, and Gry get a general assignment in sociology and begin to study democracy. Magne suggests studying the topic by using their town as an example. At this moment, he sees his mother, who has come to talk to the director. The women discuss boy's progress at school and recall the tragedy that happened many years ago when the boy's father died under mysterious circumstances. Later, the mother notices that Magne is not wearing any glasses and does not understand how this can be. But she's distracted by Vidar Utul's car. It turns out that she and Vidar have known each other for a long time. After returning home, Vidar tells his wife Ran about the meeting with the woman, while their children Fjord and Saxa discuss their appearance and whether it matches their age. Vidar gives them a task to follow Magne, who is currently engaged in repairs and notices a rune carved on his father's tools. Later, the guy visits Isolde's page and looks through her materials about the strange death of the fish in the fjord. The next day, the girl invites him to her place and reminds him that he no longer needs glasses. While choosing water in the store, she explains to Magne that he can drink tap water in Edda, and the store clerk suddenly warns the guy about the danger of the vernal equinox. In Isolde's house, the guy finds out that the history teacher, Erich, is the girl's father. At dinner, she invites him to go with her to the mountain as she monitors the speed at which the glacier is melting. They can go down by paragliding. The girl asks her father questions about her mother's death, but he keeps silent. Magne shares his memories of his father, and sweeping the girl's diary off the table, finds out that she has been hopelessly in love with Saxa for a long time. The next day, he tells his classmates about the upcoming hike in the mountains, while Fjord invites everyone to a party at his house. Returning home, Magne finds his mother repairing the fence, and his attention is drawn to his father's sledgehammer marked with the rune. The next day, Magne and Isolde go to the mountains. Soon they reach a blocked bridge, but Magne resolutely steps over the warning sign. Suddenly, the boy gets a text that his mother is unwell. He hurries to the city and Isolde goes on alone. Meanwhile, Vidar's car is driving along the mountain road. Stopping on the side of the road, Vidar goes outside, undresses, and starts hunting deer grazing on the mountain. With one blow, he kills the animal and rips out its heart. Meanwhile, Isolde reaches the glacier and sees her marks. She takes water samples and then notices the thawed entrance to the cave and photographs it. Once inside, she finds a door blocking the entrance to the depth of the cave. Standing over the fjord, Vidar eats the raw heart of the deer and emits a heart-rending cry, which frightens Isolde. Upon reaching home, Magne discovers that his mother is absolutely fine and, angry at his brother's stupid joke, goes outside. He sees Isolde paragliding down the mountain. Suddenly, the paraglider starts drifting towards electric wires. The guy hurries to the crash site and finds the girl's lifeless body. Vidar also arrives and tries to help her and then calls for an ambulance. But nothing can be done anymore. Returning home, Magne throws away his glasses and sees the sledgehammer. The distraught guy throws the hammer and it disappears into the clouds, which are instantly covered with lightning. After everything that happened, Magne is taking the death of her friend hard and decides never to wear glasses again. The classmates ask a lot of questions about the girl's death, but he can't say anything definite. He enters the classroom and sits down at the desk whose second half is covered with flowers and burning candles. Ren makes an announcement that there will be no history class today, but suddenly Isolde's father enters the classroom. He cannot stay at home alone. The man asks the school not to cancel the vernal equinox holiday because Isolde would be against such a decision. Later, the police announce that the girl's death was caused by a thunderstorm strike to the dome of the paraglider. But Magne objects. Everything happened before his eyes, and there was no thunderstorm at that time. Nevertheless, the case is being closed. On the same day, Vidar asks Stuart to get the insurance money for his car, which was smashed by some madman. And he sends the woman photos in which Stuart recognizes the sledgehammer. She hurries home to ask Magne questions, but he himself is shocked by such an accusation. The guy calculates how far he threw the hammer, 1,537 meters. But this is impossible. Magne buys a new sledgehammer and throws it in a deserted place late at night. And then he calculates the distance, 541 meters, which is several times higher than the world's record to a hammer throwing. Meanwhile, Vidar examines the sledgehammer while Ran speaks about the experiences of the school children who sincerely mourn the dead girl. And then the husband suddenly admits that he killed Isolde because she found the entrance to the cave. The woman gets angry. They agreed not to touch the children, but since it happened, they need to find Isolde's lost phone. At school, Gry and Magne continue to work on the project together and listen to a warning not to blame the destruction of the planet only on the rich. Later at home, sorting out his mother's things, Laurits finds an old blouse. Magne invites Gry to work at his house, which leads to a heartfelt conversation about Magne's past. Meanwhile, Turid notices Erich in the store looking lost. She expresses sympathy and the man is grateful to her for it. Laurits finds Magne watching the weather forecast. Magne insists that there was no thunderstorm the day Isolde died, and then he admits that it was he who threw the sledgehammer into Vido's car, but his brother doesn't believe it. The celebration of the vernal equinox begins at school. The classmates show Saxa a photo of an improvised altar at the site of Isolde's death, while Vidar inspects this area in search of the girl's phone. He notices that Magne is visiting the place too. At school, everyone is shocked by the sight of Laurits, who came to the evening in his mother's blouse and with makeup. The headmistress opens the evening and offers a moment of silence for Isolde. Saxa sings a song about her native land, which is interrupted by the appearance of Magne. Later, Laurits advises his brother to forget about Gry because Fjord is already hitting on her. Later, Laurits starts hitting on Yakutu. Then the headmistress takes the two boys away. Magne sits down with Gry, but Fjord invites the girl to a dance, and the guy has nothing to do but sit and watch. Watching them, he crushes the bottle in his hand and it shatters into small pieces. He goes to the men's room where he meets Oscar, whose mother is a police officer, and he blurts out that the girl died from hitting a rock. At this time, hot dancing begins in the hall, and Magne sees the headmistress surrounded by boys. Fjord puts on his music and he and Saxa begin a strange sensual dance to which Laurits joins. The three of them squirm on the dance floor much to the delight and astonishment of the crowd. Magne goes to Isolde's father's house and informs him about the change in the cause of his daughter's death. He's sure that the police are lying, but the inconsolable father asks to not disturb the peace of his dead daughter. Out of anger, Magne easily moves the multi-ton car in front of the house, which terrifies Erich. At this time, Fjord, Laurits and Oscar are going to the altar, and younger Utul, ridiculing people's stupid beliefs, urinates on the burning candles. Oscar manages to record this and upload everything to the internet. Fjord orders the video to be deleted, but it has already gone online. Magne is reviewing numerous notes about violations of environmental regulations by Utul Industries, which Erich shows him, and he throws away the girl's diary because she has the right to personal secrets. And at Utul's house, the owner is feeding his dog when Ran shows him a scandalous photo from the altar. The husband promises to deal with this issue. Saxa is trying to find out at least something new about Magne from Gry, who stayed overnight at their house, but she does not know anything. She goes to the bathroom and witnesses Vidar beating his son. The man is furious. People worship them too and sacrifice to them. Therefore his son insulted him with his act too. Frightened, Gry hurries to take refuge in Saxa's room. The next day, Isolde's funeral takes place and everyone goes to church, but returning home, the Sayer family finds their home trashed. The brothers go to the homeless neighbor, accusing him of stealing from their house. He admits that he has been in the apartment, but only after another man who arrived there in a big black car accompanied by a dog. The brothers realize that it is Vidar but do not understand why he needed it. Later, Magne goes to see a therapist. He feels that everything has changed around him but does not find an explanation for this. He talks about the robbery and accuses the police of inaction, and the therapist tells Ren about the session. Back home, Magne tells his mother about the conversation with the neighbor and blames Vidar, but Turid says that it's absurd and does not want to hear anything about it, especially since Erich has arrived. He hands Isolde's laptop to Magne because his computer is already failing. The guy searches the computer and finds data on changes in natural conditions in the vicinity of Edda. The same evening, Ren tells her husband about the therapy session. She is furious. Not only did Vidar break into Magne's house, but the guy's neighbor saw him, and now everyone can find out about this inexplicable case. The next day, Gry confesses to Fjord that she saw the beating, and it shocked her. But he changes the topic of the conversation. The girl agrees to ride with him, but Lauritz and Saxa are also in the car. Meanwhile, Magne is talking to a police representative again. He knows for sure that there was no wind that day, but the woman objects. He said that he got to the city in half an hour and no one can do that. The young people are driving along a mountain road and Fjord puts on a song in the ancient Icelandic language, which is surprising to Gry. Suddenly, a bird breaks against the windshield of the car. Saxa and Fjord come out to look at it. The sister reminds them of the need to learn at least something about Magne and eats the bird. Puzzled by the officer's words, Magne goes to a deserted warehouse and starts jogging to see how fast he runs. He does a 100-meter dash in just 7 seconds. Meanwhile, Erich is given Isolde's jacket, which has traces of blood on it, and Vidar follows Magne and witnesses an accident in which the guy is hit by a snowplow. He joyfully announces to the family about Magne's death, who interfered with their affairs. Then Vidar confesses to the children that he killed Isolde because she found dangerous things hidden by them in the glacier. Ren reminds them of the danger they are exposed to by getting close to mortals. Meanwhile, the doctors at the hospital are perplexed. The guy who was hit by the snowplow has no injuries at all. Magne goes home, and he doesn't know that at this very moment the body of his deceased neighbor, who was a witness to the robbery of their house, was being brought to the morgue. At home, Turid thanks the gods for saving her child's life, and Magne makes another note. He is now also invulnerable. His sight and sense of smell also have improved. The next day, during the lesson, there is a skirmish when Magne blames the Utul plants for the emissions of harmful substances which caused the inhabitants of the fjord to die. Saxa resolutely defends her father. After the lesson, Magne asks the teacher to test the dried blood from Isolde's jacket. He is sure that there's someone else's blood on the clothes. At least they smell different. The woman is surprised by his sense of smell and agrees to run the test. Later, Gry asks him questions about the incident. He shows her the jacket and asks her to smell it, but the girl does not detect the difference at all. In the afternoon, a group of classmates goes to a cafe where Oscar breaks the news about Ren's behavior the previous evening, which he learned about from his friends. Saxa is outraged by the silly rumors and stirs the conversation towards Gry, who is still a virgin. This pisses Gry off, and she goes home where she finds her father in front of a can of beer. The man is upset. The insurance company refused to pay him money for his sick lungs. No one sees the connection between the disease and the emissions from the Utul factories. Meanwhile, Vidar is raging in his house. No mortal could have survived. Who is this guy? To which Ran promises to find out everything very soon, since in the evening the brothers will come to them for dinner. Magne and Lauritz go to the Utul house, unaware that they are the only guests of the evening. They are seated at a chic table and are treated to alcoholic drinks. The hosts do not skimp on the drinks. Vidar pours Magne mead, the drink of the ancient gods. Feeling intoxicated, Magne begins to behave inappropriately, and throwing an axe at the target hanging on the wall simply breaks it. And then he confides in Ren about his new strength. The woman is surprised and offers to fight with her hands. The guy promises to defeat her and holds out his hand. They begin to fight, and Magne realizes that he cannot defeat the fragile-looking woman. They fight without restraining themselves, and at some point he suddenly sees the true appearance of an ancient monster hiding behind the guise of the beauty. At this moment the table breaks down. Jumping up from behind the wreckage, Magne sees the woman in front of him again. He goes to the bathroom and after washing his face, looks up at the mirror and suddenly sees the face of an ancient warrior staring back at him. Coming up next, a recap of the following episodes.